The notification lit up my phone at 11:47 p.m. on a Thursday, the kind of late-night ping that makes your stomach drop before you even read the words. I was sitting in my garage workshop in Toledo, Ohio, finishing up a custom railing job for the Hendersons' front porch. The smell of metal grinding hung in the air, mixing with the faint odor of WD-40 and the coffee I'd brewed 3 hours earlier and forgotten about. My hands were still black with residue from the iron oxide primer I'd been brushing onto the scrollwork. The old radio in the corner was playing some Eagles song I'd heard 1,000 times, the volume just loud enough to drown out the hum of the space heater in the corner. I almost didn't check it. Almost. But something, call it instinct, call it the weight of 10 years of marriage teaching you when something's wrong, made me set down the wire brush and wipe my hands on my jeans. The screen glowed in the dim light of the garage, casting shadows across the half-finished metalwork scattered across my bench. Tessa, I'm leaving you. Don't wait up. I'm staying in Vegas. I need to find myself. I read it once, then again. Then a third time, each word sinking deeper into my chest like a cold blade finding space between ribs. The garage suddenly felt smaller. The heat from the space heater seemed to evaporate. I could hear my own breathing, ragged and shallow, cutting through the tinny radio static. My thumb hovered over the screen, trembling slightly, not from the cold, but from something else entirely. Rage, fear, disbelief, all of it. Tessa was supposed to be on a girls' weekend in Las Vegas with her sister and 2 friends. 4 days of shows, shopping, and whatever else women do when they escape to the desert for a long weekend. I'd driven her to the airport myself on Tuesday morning, kissed her goodbye at the departure curb, told her to have fun and be safe, and now this. I need to find myself. The phrase echoed in my head like a bad sitcom punchline. Find herself. She was 34 years old, not some college kid backpacking through Europe. We had a house. We had a life. We had a decade of history that apparently meant nothing compared to 3 days in Sin City. I sat down hard on the metal stool next to my workbench, the phone still glowing in my hand. The Eagles were still singing about a hotel in California. The coffee was still cold. And my wife was in Vegas, deciding our marriage was over via text message. But here's the thing about being a welder, a fabricator, a man who works with his hands and builds things from raw materials. You learn to see the structure beneath the surface. You learn to spot weak points before they break. You learn to measure twice and cut once. And sitting there in that garage, with metal shavings stuck to my arms and my wife's goodbye burning on my phone screen, something clicked into place in my mind. Something cold and calculating and perfectly devastatingly clear. Because I knew something Tessa had apparently forgotten in her moment of Vegas-induced revelation. I knew exactly how much money was in her bank account, and it wasn't enough to find herself anywhere. Not far. Just far enough to understand how we got here, to this moment, to this garage, to this text message that felt like a punch to the throat. My name is Silas Brennan, and I'm a welder by trade. Not the kind who works in a factory punching a clock, but the kind who runs his own custom metalwork business out of a 200-square-foot workshop attached to our house on the east side of Toledo. Decorative railings, security gates, custom furniture, restoration work on historic buildings. If it involves bending, cutting, or joining metal into something beautiful and functional, I can do it. I learned the trade from my old man, who learned it from his old man, who came over from County Cork with nothing but a set of tools and a willingness to work until his hands bled. The Brennan men built half the wrought iron fences in this city between 1920 and 1980. My grandfather's work is still standing on mansions in the Old West End, black iron scrollwork that survived a century of Toledo winters and still looks as solid as the day he welded it. I took over the business when Dad's arthritis got too bad for him to hold a torch steady. That was 8 years ago. I was 28, newly married to Tessa, and convinced I could build something worth passing down to the next generation. The work is hard, physical, the kind of labor that leaves you aching in places you didn't know you had at the end of a 12-hour day. Winter is brutal, trying to weld in an unheated garage when it's 15 degrees outside and your breath crystallizes in the air. Summer isn't much better, sweating through your shirt by 9 in the morning, the heat from the torch making the workshop feel like the inside of a furnace, but it's honest work. Clean work, in its own way. You start with raw materials, cold steel, iron stock, aluminum sheet, and you transform them into something functional, something beautiful, something that will outlast you, and maybe your kids, and maybe their kids too. The money isn't steady, but it's decent when the jobs are rolling in. Some months I clear 8 grand, some months it's closer to 3. You learn to budget, to save for the slow periods, to hustle for the next contract before the current one is finished. Tessa and I met 11 years ago at a friend's barbecue. She was working as a receptionist at a dental office, bright and bubbly and full of energy that seemed to light up whatever room she walked into. She had this laugh, this genuine, unrestrained laugh that made you want to be funnier just to hear it again. We got married a year later. Small ceremony, her family and mine, a reception at the Polish Hall on Lagrange Street, with a DJ who played too much Motown and a chocolate fountain that broke down halfway through the night. It was perfect in its imperfection. The first few years were good, really good. We bought the house on Hogue Street, a small 2-bedroom bungalow with good bones but in need of work. I renovated it myself, room by room, year by year, rewired the electrical, replaced the plumbing, built custom railings for the front porch and a decorative gate for the side yard. Tessa picked out paint colors and furniture and made it feel like home. She worked at the dental office for 3 years before deciding she wanted to try something else. Then it was a boutique downtown, then a yoga studio. Then she got her real estate license, convinced she'd make a killing in property sales. That didn't pan out. The market in Toledo is tough, and Tessa didn't have the aggressive edge you need to succeed in that world. She got her license, took maybe 3 clients in 2 years, sold 1 house for a tiny commission, and let the license lapse. Then she wanted to start an online boutique. Then she wanted to become a life coach. Then she discovered Instagram and decided she could be an influencer, posting photos of our renovated kitchen and her morning smoothie bowls and motivational quotes about living your best life. None of it stuck. None of it made money. And that was fine, I told myself. Marriage is a partnership. I was making enough to cover the bills, to keep us comfortable, to save a little each month. If Tessa wanted to explore different paths, to find her passion, who was I to stand in her way except here's what I didn't realize, or maybe what I did realize but didn't want to admit. Tessa wasn't exploring different paths. She was avoiding the path altogether. She was drifting, spending money we didn't have on courses and certifications and starter kits for businesses that never got off the ground. The online boutique, she spent $3,000 on inventory that's still sitting in boxes in our spare bedroom. The life coaching certification, $1,800 for a program she completed halfway before losing interest. The Instagram influencer dream, hundreds of dollars on ring lights and backdrops and sponsored posts that generated exactly 0 revenue. And I let it happen. I worked longer hours to cover the shortfalls. I took on extra projects, side jobs, weekend work, that cut into the time we should have been spending together. I told myself it was temporary, that once Tessa found her thing, once she hit her stride, it would all balance out. It never did. Money became a silent tension between us, not the kind of explosive fights you see in movies, but a slow, grinding erosion of trust. I'd check our bank statements and see charges I didn't recognize. Another $200 at Target, another $150 at some online store, another $80 for drinks with her friends. When I brought it up, she'd get defensive. I work hard too, she'd say, even though she hadn't had a steady paycheck in 2 years. I deserve to enjoy my life. You can't expect me to live like a monk just because you want to save every penny. And maybe she was right in some small way. Maybe I was too careful with money, too cautious, too focused on building security instead of enjoying the moment. My dad had drilled into me the importance of having a cushion, of never living beyond your means, of remembering that the work can dry up at any moment. But there's a difference between being careful and being suffocated. And Tessa's spending wasn't about enjoying life. It was about filling some void that I couldn't name, and she wouldn't acknowledge. 6 months ago, things came to a head. I was looking at our finances, trying to figure out how we'd gone through our savings so quickly, when I discovered she'd opened a credit card I didn't know about. It had a $5,000 limit, and she'd maxed it out. "What the hell is this?" I asked, showing her the statement I'd found in a drawer. She didn't even flinch. "It's my card. I needed it for the business." "What business, Tessa? You don't have a business. I'm working on ideas. You wouldn't understand." "I understand debt. I understand that we're going to be paying 24% interest on $5,000 of charges I don't even recognize." The fight that followed was ugly. Not physically. I've never raised a hand to anyone in anger, and I never would. But verbally brutal in the way that only married couples can cut each other. She called me controlling. I called her irresponsible. She said I was crushing her spirit. I said she was crushing our financial future. We didn't speak for 3 days after that. When we finally did, it was a cold truce. I agreed to help her pay off the card if she agreed to close it and be more transparent about spending. She agreed, in that tone that made it clear she was humoring me rather than actually committing to change. The card got paid off. Our conversations became shorter, more transactional. "Did you pay the electric bill? What time will you be home? Can you pick up milk?" The kind of exchanges that keep a household running but don't touch the deeper fractures spreading beneath the surface. And then came the girls' trip to Vegas. Tessa's sister, Rhiannon, was turning 40. She wanted to celebrate in style, a long weekend in Las Vegas with her closest friends. Tessa was invited. The cost, $100 to $200 for flights, hotel, and her share of expenses. "Absolutely not," I said when she first brought it up. "We don't have an extra $1,200 sitting around." "It's Rhiannon's 40th birthday, Silas. I have to go." "You don't have to go. You want to go. There's a difference. We fought about it for a week. She accused me of trying to isolate her from her family. I showed her our bank balance, $3,400 in savings, which was supposed to cover property taxes due next month and any emergency that might come up. In the end, she wore me down. She always did. "Fine," I said. "Go. But this is it, Tessa. This is the last big expense until we get our savings back to where it needs to be," she promised. She swore. She kissed me and told me I was the best husband in the world. I drove her to the airport on Tuesday morning. She was practically vibrating with excitement, talking about the shows they were going to see, the restaurants they'd try, the pool parties at the hotel. I kissed her goodbye and watched her disappear through security, dragging a suitcase that probably cost more than my monthly tool budget. The first day, she texted me photos, the Bellagio fountains, her hotel room with a view of the Strip, a selfie with Rhiannon and the other girls, all of them grinning like teenagers. The second day, fewer texts. She was busy, having fun. I didn't want to be the nagging husband checking in every hour. The third day, today, radio silence until 11:47 p.m. "I'm leaving you. Don't wait up. I'm staying in Vegas. I need to find myself." Sitting in my garage, staring at those words, I felt something shift inside me. Not heartbreak. Not yet. That would come later, in the quiet hours of the morning when the shock wore off and the reality settled in. No, what I felt in that moment was something colder, something sharper. Clarity, because I knew Tessa. I knew her patterns, her impulses, her absolute inability to think more than 5 minutes into the future. I knew that whatever revelation she'd had in Vegas, whatever moment of clarity had convinced her she needed to find herself, it hadn't included any actual planning. She hadn't thought about health insurance, about her phone bill, about the fact that our mortgage was in both our names, about the fact that her car parked in our driveway still had 18 months of payments left. She hadn't thought about any of it. Because Tessa never thought about money until it was gone, and I knew with absolute bone-deep certainty that she didn't have enough money to stay in Vegas for more than another day or two. I opened my banking app. My hands were surprisingly steady as I navigated to our joint bank account. The app loaded slowly, the little spinning wheel taunting me with each rotation. The garage felt too quiet now. I turned off the radio at some point without realizing it, and all I could hear was the tick-tick-tick of the space heater cycling and my own breathing. Joint checking, $2,247. I'd deposited a $3,500 payment from a client 2 days ago. Property taxes were due in 3 weeks, $1,680. That left us with barely enough cushion to cover utilities, groceries, and the minimum payment on that credit card. Tessa had sworn she'd closed, but I'd recently discovered she'd simply hidden from me. But that wasn't what I needed to see. Tessa had her own checking account, separate from our joint account, where her sporadic income went and where she handled what she called her personal expenses. I'd stopped monitoring it years ago after she'd accused me of being controlling. "Every woman deserves financial independence," she'd said, quoting some article she'd read. I'd agreed, because fighting about it seemed worse than letting it go. Now I wished I'd fought harder. I didn't have her login credentials, but I didn't need them. Tessa was predictable in ways she didn't realize. Her password was always some variation of the same formula, a name, a year, and her favorite number. I'd watched her enter it on her laptop 100 times. Rhiannon 2024-7, the account opened. Current balance, $127.43. I stared at the number, my brain refusing to process it for a long moment. $127.43. That's what remained of whatever money Tessa had managed to scrape together for this trip, and whatever residual income she'd had from what? She hadn't worked in months. I scrolled through her recent transactions, each one a tiny knife wound. Monday, 9:47 a.m., 47.50. Lyft. Airport ride Tuesday, 2:34 p.m., 180 yen. Bellagio Boutique. Tuesday, 8:23 p.m., $220. Nobu, Las Vegas. Tuesday, 11:45 p.m., $65. 00XS Nightclub Wednesday, 11:12 a.m., 95.0. Spa Bellagio Wednesday, 3:47 p.m., 340. Venetian Shopping. Wednesday, 9:15 p.m., 275.0. Gordon Ramsay. Steakhouse, Thursday, 1:22 a.m., 150.0. Omnia Nightclub. Thursday, 10:34 a.m., 500.0. Cash deposit. ATM. That last one caught my eye. A cash deposit at an ATM. Where had she gotten $500 in cash? Had she borrowed it from Rhiannon? Or, the next transaction answered my question. Thursday, 10:37 a.m., 85 Pausari slot machine, Bellagio Casino. Thursday, 11:04 a.m., 200 Fasu slot machine, Bellagio Casino. Thursday, 2:15 p.m., 150 Blackjack, Caesar's Palace. My wife had taken out cash, probably from a casino ATM, which meant she'd paid a ridiculous fee and then gambled it all away within hours. The $127.43 remaining in her account was probably from some small win she'd had before the inevitable losses. I sat back on my stool, the metal cold against my thighs, even through my jeans. The phone felt heavy in my hand, like it was made of lead instead of glass and circuits. She'd spent nearly $2,000 in 3 days. Money she didn't have. Money we didn't have. And now she was texting me at midnight about staying in Vegas to find herself with a bank balance that wouldn't cover a week's worth of hotel rooms. The anger I'd been holding back started to surface, not the hot, explosive kind, but something colder and more dangerous. The kind of anger that comes from years of watching someone you love make the same mistakes over and over, of extending grace and patience, and understanding only to have it thrown back in your face with a text message about personal growth and self-discovery. I thought about calling her, confronting her, demanding to know what the hell she was thinking, but that's what she'd expect. That's what we'd done 100 times before, me reacting emotionally, her playing the victim, the whole cycle spiraling into accusations and tears, and eventually a grudging reconciliation that solved nothing. Not this time. This time, I was going to do something different. I opened the screenshot function on my phone and captured her bank statement, the current balance at the top, the list of Vegas expenses scrolling down below. The image was crisp, clear, undeniable. $127.43, surrounded by the evidence of 3 days of financial recklessness. Then I opened our joint account and took another screenshot. $2,247 with the property tax deadline clearly visible in the upcoming payments list. Finally, I pulled up the credit card statement, the one she thought I didn't know about, with its $4,200 balance at 24.99% APR. 3 images, 3 pieces of evidence. Together they told a story. My wife had just declared her independence while standing on the edge of financial disaster, supported by my labor, my sacrifice, my willingness to keep the machinery of our life running while she chased whatever fantasy had captured her attention this week. My thumb hovered over her text message again. I'm leaving you. Don't wait up. I'm staying in Vegas. I need to find myself. In that moment, sitting in my garage with metal shavings on my arms and grease under my fingernails, I made a decision. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to plead. I wasn't going to send a desperate message asking her to reconsider, to come home, to remember the 10 years we'd built together. Instead, I was going to send her the truth. I attached all 3 screenshots to a new message and typed, "Silas. Looks like you'll need to find yourself on $127.43. Good luck with that." I hit send before I could second-guess myself. The message showed as delivered immediately. Then, about 30 seconds later, read. I watched the screen, my heart hammering in my chest. Those 3 little dots appeared, indicating she was typing. Disappeared. Appeared again. Disappeared. This went on for almost 5 minutes, her starting to respond, deleting it, starting again. I could practically see her face, could imagine the sequence of emotions. Confusion, then understanding, then panic, as the reality of her situation crashed down around her Vegas fantasy. Finally, the dots steadied and a message came through. "Tessa, you've been spying on my account?" I almost laughed. Of course, that would be her first response. Not embarrassment, not acknowledgement of the obvious problem. Deflection and accusation. "Silas, your password is literally the same one you've used for everything since 2019. It's not spying when you make it that easy, Tessa. This is exactly why I need space from you. You're controlling and manipulative, and I can't breathe in this relationship." The capital letters were meant to convey righteous anger, but all they conveyed to me was desperation. She knew she was cornered. She knew the numbers didn't lie. "Silas, you can't breathe? Or you can't spend money we don't have without being called out on it?" The dots appeared and disappeared several more times. I could feel her scrambling, trying to find an angle, a justification, anything to shift the narrative back in her favor. "Tessa, I can't believe you're making this about money. This is about yes, about how unhappy I've been, about how you've made me feel like a prisoner in my own life. Silas, you're right. This isn't about money, it's about you texting me at midnight to say you're leaving while you're drunk in Vegas with $100 to your name and no plan beyond finding yourself. You want to leave? Leave. But don't pretend this is some brave act of independence when you can't even afford your flight home." This time, the silence stretched longer. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes. I set the phone down on my workbench and stood up, my knees cracking from sitting too long in the cold. I walked to the garage door and looked out at our street, quiet, dark, the streetlights casting orange pools on the pavement. The Johnsons' house across the street had their porch light on. The Carter's dog was barking at something in their backyard. Normal. Everything out there was normal. People sleeping, living their lives, unaware that mine was imploding in real time through a series of text messages. My phone buzzed. "Tessa, I'll get a job here. I'll make it work." Now I did laugh, a short, bitter sound that echoed in the garage. "Silas, doing what? You haven't held a job for more than 6 months in the last 3 years. You think Vegas is going to be different? You think you're going to land on your feet in one of the most expensive cities in the country with no connections, no savings, and no plan? Tessa, you don't believe in me. You never believed in me." "Silas, I paid for every business idea you've had, every course, every certification, every inventory order for ventures that went nowhere. I worked extra hours so you could explore your passions. I believed in you enough for both of us, Tessa. But believing in someone doesn't mean pretending they're making good decisions when they're clearly not." The dots appeared again, then disappeared, then nothing. I waited, the phone in my hand, my breath fogging in the cold garage air. The space heater clicked off, leaving only the ambient sounds of the night. Distant traffic on I-475, a siren somewhere to the south, the wind rattling the loose panel on the garage door I'd been meaning to fix. 10 minutes passed. 15. Then, "Tessa, can you wire me money for the hotel, just enough to get through the weekend?" There it was, the inevitable ask. The moment where the fantasy collided with logistics, and she needed me to fix it, to bail her out, to make the problem go away, so she could continue pretending she was an independent woman making independent choices. I looked at that message for a long time, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. A month ago, hell, a week ago, I probably would have done it. I would have grumbled, maybe made some comment about this being the last time, but I would have sent the money. Because that's what you do in a marriage, right? You support each other. You help each other through rough patches. You don't let your spouse get stranded in Vegas even if they're being an idiot. But something had shifted tonight. Maybe it was the casual cruelty of that first text, delivered at midnight with no warning, no conversation, just a declaration that she was done. Maybe it was seeing the evidence of her spending laid out in black and white, the sheer thoughtlessness of burning through money while planning to abandon our life. Maybe it was the accumulation of years of this pattern, the endless cycle of drama and crisis and last-minute saves that never led to any actual change. Whatever it was, I'd reached my limit. Silas. No. One word. Simple. Clean. Final. Tessa. What do you mean, no? I'm your wife. Silas. You just told me you're leaving me. You don't get to be my wife when it's convenient for you and single when you want to find yourself. Pick one. Tessa. This is cruel. I can't believe you're doing this to me. Silas. I'm not doing anything to you. You did this to yourself. You chose to blow your money. You chose to send me that text. These are consequences, Tessa, not cruelty. Tessa. Fine, fine. I'll call Rhiannon. She'll help me. Silas. Good. I hope she does. And then I did something I'd never done before in 10 years of marriage. I turned off my phone. Not just silenced it. Not just set it face down on the table. I powered it completely off and set it on my workbench, next to the half-finished railing and the cold coffee and the wire brush I'd been using before my world tilted on its axis. The garage felt even quieter without the possibility of the phone buzzing. No notifications, no responses, no continued drama spiraling through the night. Just me and the work and the cold and the reality that my marriage, my 10-year investment in another person, in building a life together, had apparently ended with a drunk text from Vegas and a bank statement showing $127.43 done. I should have felt devastated. Maybe I would later. But right now, standing in that garage with my hands finally clean and my head finally clear, I felt something unexpected. Relief. I didn't turn my phone back on until the next morning. I'd spent the rest of Thursday night in the garage not working. I couldn't focus enough for that. But just being there, in the space where I understood the rules. Metal behaves predictably. Apply heat, it expands. Apply pressure to a joint, it holds or it fails. There's no ambiguity in metalwork, no gray areas where someone can rewrite the narrative to suit their needs. By 3 a.m. I'd given up on sleep and started cleaning my workshop. I organized my tools, wrenches by size, files by coarseness, welding rods by composition. I swept the floor, collected the metal shavings into a bucket for scrap, wiped down my workbench. The physical activity helped, gave my hands something to do while my brain processed what had happened. Dawn came slowly, the winter sun struggling up over the horizon like it didn't really want to commit to the day. I made coffee in the garage, a fresh pot this time, and finally, at 7:30 a.m., powered my phone back on. The messages came flooding in. 23 of them, all from Tessa, time-stamped between midnight and 5 a.m. I read them in order. Tessa, 12:47 a.m. I can't believe you turned off your phone. Tessa, 12:52 a.m. This is so typical of you. Running away instead of dealing with things. Tessa, 1:15 a.m. Rhiannon said you're being abusive by withholding financial support. Tessa, 1:18 a.m. She said I should call the police. Tessa, 1:44 a.m. You know what? I don't need you. I don't need your money, or your judgment, or your control. Tessa, 2:03 a.m. I'm going to be fine. Better than fine. I'm going to thrive without you dragging me down. Tessa, 2:31 a.m. Are you seriously still not answering? We need to talk about the house and the car and everything. Tessa, 2:55 a.m. Fine, don't answer, but you're going to have to talk to me eventually. We have legal things to figure out. Tessa, 3:22 a.m. My lawyer is going to take you for everything. You abandoned me in Vegas. That's abandonment. That's grounds for divorce, and I'll get the house and spousal support, and That message cut off mid-sentence. The next one came 40 minutes later. Tessa, 4:04 a.m. Okay, so Rhiannon talked to her lawyer friend, and he said it's more complicated than that, but still, you can't just leave your wife stranded. Tessa, 4:09 a.m. Please just wire me $500, just enough to get through tomorrow. We can figure everything else out when I get home. Tessa, 4:41 a.m. Silas, please, I'm scared. I don't know what to do. Tessa, 5:12 a.m. I'm sorry. I'm sorry about the text. I was drunk and upset, and Rhiannon's friend Chelsea kept saying all this stuff about how I deserve better, and I should go after what I want, and I don't know, I messed up. Can we please talk? I set the phone down and took a long drink of coffee. It was hot and bitter and exactly what I needed. She was spiraling. I could see the progression: anger, then threats, then rationalization, then backtracking, then fear, then finally something approaching an apology. The same pattern we'd played out a dozen times over the years, just compressed into a single night of increasingly desperate messages. And normally, this is where I'd cave. Where I'd tell her it was okay, we could figure it out. I'd send the money and we'd talk it through when she got home. The pattern would continue. Nothing would change. But I'd made a decision in that garage last night, and I was going to stick with it. I typed out a response, chose my words carefully. Silas. Tessa, I'm not angry anymore. I'm just done. You sent me a message saying you're leaving. So leave. I'm not going to stop you. But I'm also not going to fund it. You're a grown woman who made a choice. Now you get to live with it. The response came back almost immediately. She must have been watching her phone, waiting. Tessa. You don't mean that, Silas. I absolutely do. Tessa. But what about us? What about our marriage? Silas. You ended our marriage at 11:47 p.m. yesterday. I'm just accepting your decision. Tessa. I was drunk. People say things they don't mean when they're drunk. Silas. Maybe, but drunk words are sober thoughts, right? Isn't that the saying? You've been unhappy for a while. This wasn't just the alcohol talking. This was you finally saying what you've been thinking. Tessa. So that's it? 10 years and you're just done? I stared at that message for a long moment. Was I done? Really? The honest answer was, I didn't know. Maybe I was. Maybe I wasn't. Maybe I just needed to see what happened when I stopped being the safety net, stopped catching her every time she jumped without looking. Silas. I'm done being your backup plan. I'm done working myself to exhaustion while you treat our money like monopoly cash. I'm done having the same fights about the same problems that never get solved because you never face consequences. So if that means I'm done with the marriage, yeah, maybe I am. My phone immediately started ringing. Tessa's name and photo, a picture from our honeymoon in Myrtle Beach, both of us sunburned and grinning, filled the screen. I let it ring. It went to voicemail. 15 seconds later, she called again. I let that one ring too. The third time I answered but didn't speak. Silas. Silas. Are you there? Her voice was ragged, strained. I could hear background noise. Slot machines, people talking, the ambient chaos of a casino floor at 7:30 in the morning. I'm here, I said finally. Oh, thank God. Listen, we need to... I can't... She was stumbling over her words, breathing hard. I need to come home. I need to talk to you in person. This is too important to do over the phone. So come home. I can't afford the flight. They want $400 for a same-day ticket and I can't... Take the bus. The bus? Silas, that's like 30 hours. Greyhound from Las Vegas to Toledo runs about $180. You have $127 in your account, but I'm sure Rhiannon can spot you the difference. That'll give you plenty of time to think about what you want to say when you get here. Silence on the other end. Then, you're seriously going to make me take a bus across the country? I'm not making you do anything. You chose to spend your money. These are the options you have left. This is punishment. You're punishing me. No, Tessa. I'm just not rescuing you. There's a difference. I heard her breath hitch, the sound she makes right before she starts crying. It used to break me, that sound. It used to make me want to fix everything immediately, to take back anything harsh I'd said, to make her happy again. Not this time. I have to go, I said. "I have a client meeting at 9. "Wait, don't—" I hung up. My hands were shaking slightly. From adrenaline or coffee or the sheer weight of what I was doing, I couldn't tell. I'd never hung up on Tessa before, not in 10 years, not through fights, not through tears, not through anything. The phone rang again immediately. I powered it off. The client meeting was with the Hendersons, the railing job I'd been finishing when Tessa's text came through. They wanted to see the completed work before I installed it. I loaded the railing into my truck and drove to their house on Collingwood Boulevard, one of those beautiful old Victorians in the old West End that had survived the decades when other houses on the block were falling apart. Mrs. Henderson met me at the door, all smiles. Silas, perfect timing, let me get Richard. They both came out to look at the railing, running their hands along the scrollwork, testing the weight, nodding approvingly at the welded joints. "This is beautiful work," Mr. Henderson said. "Really top-notch. Your grandfather would be proud." The compliment landed harder than it should have. My grandfather had been dead for 15 years, but his legacy was still the measuring stick I judged my own work against. Would this piece still be standing in 50 years? In 100? Would someone look at it and know that a Brennan made it, that it was built to last? "Thank you," I said. "I'll install it tomorrow if that works for you." "Perfect. And hey," Mr. Henderson pulled out his checkbook. "Let me pay you now so you don't have to wait. I know how it is for small businesses." He wrote me a check for $800, the agreed-upon price. I thanked him, shook his hand, and drove home with the check sitting on my passenger seat, $800. A good job. Fair pay for skilled work. Money that would go toward the property taxes, toward keeping the lights on, toward maintaining the life I'd built. Money that Tessa would have spent on. What? Another business course, another trip, another impulsive purchase that would sit unused in our spare bedroom? I deposited the check using my phone app, watching the funds clear into our joint account. $4,047.18 total now. Enough breathing room. Enough to cover the taxes and have a cushion left over. Then I changed the account settings, removing Tessa's access. It felt decisive, final. The kind of action that couldn't be undone without a conversation, without deliberation. It felt like I was building a wall between us, brick by brick, decision by decision. But it also felt necessary. My phone stayed off for most of Friday. I worked in the garage, starting a new project, a custom gate for a lawyer's office downtown. The work was meditative, requiring enough focus that I couldn't think about anything else. Heat the metal, shape it, let it cool. Measure, cut, join. Build something permanent from temporary chaos. At 5 p.m. I turned the phone back on. 68 messages. Not all from Tessa. Some from her sister, some from her friends, some from her mother. A coordinated campaign. Rhiannon. "I can't believe what you're doing to my sister, Chelsea," unknown number. "Tessa told us everything." "You should be ashamed," Tessa's mom. "Silas, honey, what's going on? Tessa called me crying and I can barely understand her. Can you please call me?" And from Tessa herself. A progression. Tessa, 10:24 a.m. "I'm getting on a bus at noon. I'll be home Saturday afternoon. We will talk about this." Tessa, 12:47 p.m. "This bus is disgusting. There's a guy next to me who smells like he hasn't showered in a month. This is your fault." Tessa, 3:15 p.m. "We just stopped in Flagstaff. I have $43 left. I can't even buy decent food." Tessa, 6:32 p.m. "I hate you. I hate what you're doing to me. This is abuse." Tessa, 8:19 p.m. "Okay, I don't hate you. I'm just tired and hungry, and this trip is hell and I want to be home." Tessa, 10:04 p.m. "Are you really not going to respond to any of my messages?" I scrolled through them all, feeling oddly detached. Like I was reading about someone else's life, someone else's problems. The words didn't land the way they used to. The accusations didn't burrow under my skin. I typed a single response. Silas. "Let me know when you're close to Toledo. We'll talk when you get home." Then I turned the phone off again and went to bed. Saturday afternoon, 3:47 p.m. My phone buzzed with a new message. "Tessa, I'm at the bus station. Can you pick me up or should I get an Uber I can't afford?" I stared at the message. This was another one of those decision points. Another moment where I could soften, could extend an olive branch, could start letting things slide back toward the familiar patterns. Silas, I'll be there in 20 minutes. I'll be there in E. The Toledo bus station is on Jefferson Avenue, a squat concrete building that looks exactly like what it is, a way station for people traveling on the cheapest option available. I pulled into the parking lot and saw Tessa immediately, sitting on a bench outside, her suitcase next to her, looking exhausted and defeated and small in a way I'd never seen her before. She'd left for Vegas on Tuesday wearing designer jeans and a leather jacket, hair perfect, makeup flawless, radiating that confident energy she always had when she was about to do something fun. Now she looked like she'd been through a war. Her hair was pulled into a messy ponytail. Her makeup was gone or smudged. She was wearing sweatpants and a hoodie I didn't recognize, probably borrowed from Rhiannon. The confident glow had been replaced by exhaustion and something else, genuine fear. I pulled up to the curb. She stood, grabbed her suitcase, and walked to the truck. She opened the passenger door, threw her suitcase in the back seat, and climbed in. We sat in silence for a long moment. "Thank you for coming," she said finally, her voice small. Can we go home?" I put the truck in gear and pulled out of the parking lot. The drive back to Hogue Street took 12 minutes. Neither of us spoke. The radio played some generic country song I didn't know. The late afternoon sun slanted through the windshield, harsh and unforgiving. I pulled into our driveway, shut off the engine. "We need to talk," Tessa said. "Yeah," I agreed. "We do." We went inside. The house felt different, colder maybe, or just emptier. Tessa dropped her suitcase in the hallway and went straight to the kitchen, filling a glass with water and drinking it down in long gulps. I sat at the kitchen table, the same one we'd had since we moved in. The same table where we'd eaten 1,000 dinners, had 1,000 conversations, made 1,000 plans for a future that apparently meant more to me than it did to her. She sat down across from me, cradling her water glass. "So," she said. "So. I'm sorry. For which part?" Her eyes flashed with annoyance. There was the Tessa I knew, the one who didn't like being called out, but she tamped it down. For the text, for how I said it. I was drunk and stupid and But were you wrong? She blinked. "What? Were you wrong about being unhappy? About wanting something different? About feeling trapped or controlled or whatever it was that made you send that message? Were you wrong about any of that?" She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. I don't know." "You don't know." I was caught up in the moment. Chelsea kept talking about how she left her husband and how free she felt and how I deserved to be happy, and it made sense at the time. And now I'm sitting in our kitchen after the worst bus ride of my life, realizing that maybe freedom isn't all it's cracked up to be. I nodded slowly. "Here's what I think, Tessa. I think you were telling the truth when you sent that text. Maybe not about the details, maybe not about Vegas specifically, but about being unhappy, about wanting out. I think you've been wanting out for a while, but you've been too scared to actually pull the trigger because that would mean facing reality. Facing the fact that you can't make it on your own, not the way you've been living." Her face crumpled. "That's not fair." "It's completely fair. You haven't had steady income in 2 years. You've burned through thousands of dollars on business ideas that went nowhere. You rack up debt and then act surprised when there are consequences. And when I try to have an adult conversation about it, you accuse me of being controlling. Because you are controlling. You monitor our accounts. You question every purchase. I work 60-hour weeks to keep this house afloat while you play entrepreneur with money we don't have. That's not controlling, Tessa. That's called being responsible." My voice had risen. I took a breath, forced myself to calm down. "I'm done," I said quietly. "I'm done with this pattern. I'm done being your safety net while you treat our life like a backup plan. If you want a divorce, fine. We'll figure it out. But if you want to stay married, things have to change. Really change. Not just promises that last a week before we're back to the same old shit." Tessa was crying now, tears streaming down her face. "I don't want a divorce. I don't know how to fix this. I don't know how to be what you need. I need a partner, Tessa, not a dependent. I need someone who pulls their weight financially and emotionally. I need someone who thinks before they act, who considers consequences, who doesn't blow up our life because they had too many drinks in Vegas. She nodded, wiping at her face with her sleeve. Okay, I can do that. I can be better. Can you? Yes. I swear, Silas. I'll get a real job. I'll stick with it. I'll stop with the business ideas and the spending. I'll prove to you that I can change. I looked at her, really looked at her. She was crying, disheveled, desperate. Part of me wanted to believe her, wanted to think that this time, this crisis, would be the wake-up call she needed. But I'd seen this before. The tears, the promises, the brief period of reformed behavior before things gradually slid back to normal. Prove it, I said finally. Don't tell me, prove it. Get a job and keep it. Cut up the credit cards, live within a budget, show me with actions, not words. I will. I promise I will. And Tessa, if you can't, if you won't, then we're done. For real this time. I'm not playing this game anymore. She nodded frantically. I understand, I do. You won't regret this, Silas. I'm going to make this right. I wanted to believe her. I really did. That conversation happened on Saturday, February 1st. Today is Saturday, March 29th. Nearly 2 months have passed since Tessa came home from Vegas on that Greyhound bus, looking like a whipped dog and swearing she'd changed. And you know what? She actually did. Not immediately. There was no magical transformation, no instant flip from irresponsible to reliable. But slowly, incrementally, she started to prove that the words she'd spoken in our kitchen weren't just panic-driven promises. The Monday after she got home, she started applying for jobs. Real jobs, not I'm going to be my own boss schemes. By Wednesday, she had 3 interviews lined up. By Friday, she'd accepted a position as an administrative assistant at a law firm downtown, $42,000 a year, full benefits, regular hours, not glamorous. Not exciting, but steady, reliable, real. She started the job 2 weeks later and has shown up every single day since. She gets up at 6:30, makes coffee, drives herself to the office, works 8 hours, comes home. She complains sometimes about her boss being demanding, about the workload being heavy, about wanting to quit when things get stressful. But she doesn't quit. She stays. She shows up. The credit card? We paid it off together using the money I'd set aside for property taxes. Then I took out a short-term loan against a commercial project to cover the taxes. Tessa handed me the physical card. I cut it up with my metal snips, and we threw it in the trash together. She has 1 debit card now linked to her personal checking account. Her paycheck gets direct deposited there, and she has access to see our joint account, but can't transfer from it without both our signatures. Is it ideal? No. It's a level of financial oversight that feels uncomfortable, restrictive, not how equal partners should operate. But it's necessary. Trust isn't rebuilt overnight. It's earned back slowly through consistent action over time. We started seeing a marriage counselor in mid-February. Tessa's idea, surprisingly. Dr. Patricia Holbrook, an older woman with an office in Sylvania who doesn't take shit from either of us. She's made us talk about things we'd been avoiding for years. Money, obviously, but also deeper issues. Tessa's need for external validation, my tendency to enable bad behavior rather than confront it, our complete failure to communicate about expectations and boundaries. It's been hard, really hard. Some sessions end with both of us angry, driving home in silence. Some sessions break us open in ways that leave me feeling raw for days. But we're talking, really talking, maybe for the first time in years. Last week, Tessa got her first paycheck from the law firm. After taxes, it was $1,384.62. She deposited it, then sat down with me to create a budget. We allocated money for her car payment, her portion of household expenses, her contribution to our joint savings, and what was left over, about $250, was hers to spend however she wanted. She spent $80 of it on groceries and put the rest in savings. I cried. Not in front of her. I went out to the garage and just stood there letting the weight of that moment hit me. My wife had earned money and voluntarily saved it instead of immediately spending it on something frivolous. It was such a small thing, such a basic adult behavior, but for us, it was monumental. We haven't talked much about that night, the text message, the screenshots, the bus ride home. It sits between us like a scar, healed over but still tender, still visible. Sometimes I look at Tessa and wonder if she resents me for it, for not rescuing her, for making her face the consequences of her decisions instead of cushioning the blow like I'd always done before. But then, she'll do something. Bring home her pay stub to show me without me having to ask, or suggest we eat at home instead of going out to save money, or ask my opinion before making a purchase. And I realize she needed that moment. She needed to hit bottom. She needed to understand that freedom without responsibility is just chaos. And I needed it too. I needed to stop being the martyr, the long-suffering husband who worked himself into the ground while enabling her worst impulses. I needed to set boundaries and enforce them, even when it was hard, even when it would have been easier to just cave. The house feels different now, lighter somehow, even though we're navigating heavier topics than we ever did before. We're building something new on the foundation of what almost fell apart, and I don't know yet if it'll last. Maybe we'll make it, maybe we won't. But for the first time in years, we're both actually trying. Last night, Tessa came out to the garage while I was working on a restoration project. A section of decorative ironwork from a historic building in downtown Toledo. She watched me work for a while, not saying anything, just being present. Finally, she spoke. I never apologized properly. For the text, for Vegas, for all of it. I set down my tools. You've apologized a dozen times. No, I've said I'm sorry, but I never acknowledged how badly I hurt you, how disrespectful it was, how cruel. I didn't respond immediately. The garage was quiet except for the hiss of the space heater. You did hurt me, I said finally. Not just the text, but the whole pattern. Feeling like I didn't matter except as a bank account, like our life together was just a fallback option while you chased whatever seemed more exciting. She nodded, tears in her eyes. I know. And I hate that I made you feel that way. You deserved better. You deserved a partner, not a project. You're not a project, Tessa. I was, though. I was this thing you had to fix, had to manage, had to bail out. That's not a marriage. That's a parent-child relationship. She wasn't wrong. So what now? I asked. Now I keep showing up. I keep proving that I'm more than my worst moment. I keep being the partner you deserved all along. I pulled her close and she leaned into me, and we stood there in my garage surrounded by half-finished metalwork and the smell of grease and the cold February night pressing against the walls. Okay, I said, let's see where this goes. I still have the screenshots. I haven't deleted them. They're buried in my phone in a folder I never open, but they're there. Evidence of the moment our marriage almost ended. Evidence of Tessa standing on the edge of disaster, with 127 to 43 and no plan. Evidence of me finally drawing a line and refusing to cross it. Sometimes I think about deleting them, moving on completely, leaving that night in the past where it belongs. But not yet, because they remind me of something important. Love isn't just about forgiveness and second chances. It's also about accountability and boundaries, and demanding better from the people who claim to love you. It's about knowing when to be gentle and when to be hard, when to rescue and when to let someone face the consequences of their choices. It's about building something strong enough to last, something that can weather the storms, survive the earthquakes, stand for generations. Like the ironwork my grandfather made. Like the business I've built with my own hands. Like the marriage Tessa and I are rebuilding, one honest conversation at a time. This morning, I finished the Henderson railing installation. Mr. Henderson stood on his porch, admiring the work, running his hand along the smooth curves of the scrollwork. Your grandfather would be proud, he said again. And this time, I believed him. Because I'm not just building railings anymore. I'm building a life, messy and imperfect and still under construction, but strong where it needs to be, built to last. Tessa texted me around noon. Don't forget we have counseling at 6. I'll pick up dinner after. Thinking Chinese? Your choice, though. I smiled and typed back, Chinese sounds good. See you tonight. Normal, domestic, small. But after nearly losing everything, small feels miraculous. It's August now. Toledo summer. which means humid and sticky, and the kind of heat that makes you want to live in air conditioning. Tessa is still at the law firm. She got a small raise in June, when $500 more annually, and came home excited about it in a way that made my heart ache. Not because the raise was life-changing, but because she was proud of earning it. We paid off the loan I took out for property taxes. Our joint savings account has $8,200 in it. Tessa's personal account has $2,100. We're not rich, but we're stable, secure, building towards something instead of perpetually scrambling. We still see Dr. Holbrook every other week. The sessions are easier now, less about crisis management and more about maintenance, learning to communicate better, learning to support each other without enabling dysfunction. Last month we took a trip, just a long weekend to Niagara Falls. Nothing extravagant, just a cheap hotel and walking around the falls and eating at diners. We budgeted for it together, saved for it together, enjoyed it together. No surprises, no hidden expenses, no fighting about money, just two people trying to rebuild trust and finding out they actually still like each other when the chaos isn't in the way. The screenshots are still in my phone. I looked at them the other day, for the first time in months. That text message, "I'm leaving you, don't wait up, I'm staying in Vegas, I need to find myself." And the bank statement, 127.43 lives. It feels like looking at artifacts from someone else's life, like reading about characters in a story that happened to other people. But it did happen to us, it was real, it was devastating, and somehow we survived it. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if Tessa and I will make it another 10 years or 20 or 50. I don't know if this version of us, the one built on honesty and accountability instead of enabling and avoidance, is strong enough to last. But I know we're trying, really trying, both of us, and that has to count for something. Last week, a client asked me how long a wrought iron fence should last if it's properly maintained. Generations, I told him. If it's built right and cared for, it'll outlast you and your grandkids. How do you build it right, he asked. I thought about it for a moment. Strong foundation, quality materials, attention to detail. And when you spot a weak point, you fix it immediately instead of waiting for it to fail. He nodded, satisfied with the answer. I was talking about fences, but I could have been talking about marriage.